Joining me now to tell us more about this international case is Mark Adamanis. He's a legal assistant at Richard Kibbe and Orby. Mark, now, as Igor said in his report, this is not the first time this has happened. You know, maybe you could give us some more insight into why Russians are so sensitive about this issue.
Well, I think this issue, you know, the idea of Americans adopting Russian children, reminds a lot of Russians about a time in the 90s when the country essentially collapsed. The number of orphans, I did a little bit of looking, the number of orphans doubled in Russia in the span of just a year or two. So I think there is some genuine concern in Russian society about this sort of issue. I also do think it's a pretty handy political prop. In this case, clearly these parents, horrifically abused this child. And while I do think there is some genuine concern in Russian society, it's also a pretty effective political prop for people that are trying to make the Americans look bad. We don't come out looking very good in this. These people, adopted actually 2 kids from Russia, I believe. They abused one to death, and I think it stands to reason they abused the other one pretty significantly as well. And I think another issue is that the American officials were not really seen as taking the responsibilities to inform the Russians. I know there are some kind of diplomatic protocols.
And on that note, what are Russians calling for now? I understand that they are trying to have more tight monitoring over these kind of adoptions.
Yeah, I think they even proposed an outright ban, which I don't think would be a very good idea. I think there still are a number of these children in Russia that can't yet, find adoptive Russian parents. This issue actually kind of hits close to a lot of people in America. I think there was something like 60,000 Russians who have been adopted by American families. One of my uncles actually adopted a kid from Russia. So this is an issue that affects a lot of people. I don't think the idea of a ban is a particularly good one, but again, it's very effective politics. It's seen as caring for a vulnerable social group. It's seen as standing up for the rights of Russians. I don't think it would do much really to kind of positively impact those, but that's politics.
About 100,000 or more kids in Russian orphanages, I think the numbers are now. Russian officials, as it mentioned in the story, they've opened a criminal case. The U.S. has already arrested these parents. They are charged with murder. They're in jail without bail. So how does that work with the Russians also opening a criminal investigation?
Yeah, I don't think there's really going to be a whole lot coming from that. I mean, I think that aspect of it is very much for domestic political consumption. They want to be seen as doing something. I can't imagine the kind of things. I don't think there's really any precedent for this sort of thing in the Russians opening a parallel criminal investigation. Obviously, these people are going to be charged. I think it stands to reason they're going to be found guilty, and I think they're going to be sentenced for a very long time in a U.S. jail. And obviously,
in theory, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I mean there have been other cases where a Russian adopted child has died and the adoptive American parent has ended up getting off. So could this be the Russian government's attempt to be able to try these parents if they do get off in U.S. courts?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly they want to be seen as doing something for the issue. In this particular case, again, I can't really see it coming to something, but yeah, I mean, again, there are lots of Russian kids who have been adopted. If one of these cases, God forbid, happens again in the future, maybe this will be some sort of precedent where, yeah, the Russians can pick up in the case of if there's some kind of judicial mishap. But yeah, in this particular case, from everything I've read, it sounds like these people are dead to rights guilty, and they'll justly be convicted of a very serious crime.
Well, something we'll definitely follow, and thanks for giving us more insight into this case.